Decades later, the quiet still speaks volumes.
In the quiet, idyllic town of Glen Ellyn, Illinois, a horrifying mystery began one summer day that would haunt a community for decades. It was a place where kids played freely and doors remained unlocked. But in 1985, the sense of security was shattered when a 15-year-old girl simply walked to the store and vanished. What followed was a frustrating, decades-long search for answers, filled with strange clues and dead ends, until the truth emerged from the most unexpected place: the disappearance. Christy Wesselman, born April 19, 1970, was a vibrant, popular teenager. She loved spending time outdoors, was actively involved in school life as class vice president, and excelled in sports like volleyball and softball. On July 21, 1985, a typical summer afternoon, Christy came home from summer classes around 3:30 p.m. Just minutes after arriving, she decided to make a quick trip to a local store, only a short walk from her house, to buy soda and chocolate bars for herself and her mom. Her mother expected her back in mere moments. But as time stretched on, it became chillingly clear: Christy wasn't coming home. With no cell phones back then, Christy's mom had no way to check in. As evening fell, her worry escalated into frantic searching. She called all of Christy's friends. No one had seen her. Desperate, she went to the store herself, scanning the familiar streets, but there was no sign of Christy anywhere. By 1:50 a.m., with still no trace of her daughter, Christy's mother made the agonizing call to the police. A horrific discovery. Officers immediately joined the search, starting by retracing Christy's last known movements. The store clerk, who knew Christy well, confirmed she had visited around 4 p.m., bought some chocolate bars and left, appearing happy and normal. Other witnesses also saw her at the store, but no one recalled where she went next. After interviewing all of Christy's friends, it became clear she hadn't met up with anyone. The police intensified their search, combing the streets through the night, but found nothing. No clues, no leads, no trace. The next morning, a new team took over. One detective, speculating Christy might have taken a shortcut, decided to retrace the shortest path from her house to the store, a well-worn trail through a large, vacant field with tall grass. Local kids frequently used this path to cut across to the store or a nearby McDonald's. As the detective followed the trail, something unusual caught his eye in the overgrown grass. Pushing through, he made a horrifying discovery. It was Christy's body. Unanswered questions and a stored secret. Backup was immediately called, and Christy's body was handed over to medical examiners. Forensic specialists meticulously combed the crime scene, but their search yielded nothing. No footprints, no personal belongings, no obvious clues to explain what happened. The medical examiners determined Christy had died from 8 stab wounds. They also found evidence of sexual assault and collected the perpetrator's biological material. However, in 1985, DNA testing was still in its infancy and not yet commonly used in criminal investigations, so the crucial sample was carefully stored for future use. Christy's mother provided another important detail. Christy had been wearing a pearl ring that day, but it was nowhere to be found, neither on her body nor at the crime scene. Detectives theorized the killer might have taken it, instructing officers to watch pawn shops, but the ring never surfaced. With no physical evidence, police focused on witnesses near the field. Several people had used the path around the time of the murder, but surprisingly, none reported seeing anything suspicious. This was particularly bizarre because Christy's body was just a few yards off the trail, hidden only by tall grass. Even a family hosting a barbecue just dozens of yards away in their backyard recalled hearing or seeing nothing out of the ordinary. A gas station employee nearby also noticed nothing amiss during his entire shift. Investigators theorized the attacker either followed Christy or encountered her on the path, leading her a few yards into the tall grass before killing her, all without making a sound. The small-town nature of Glen Ellyn led detectives to consider that Christy might have known her killer, which could explain the lack of screams. They investigated all men who knew Christy and reviewed a list of men with prior violent crime convictions in the area, but every lead led to a dead end. A promising lead, a ruined life. For 3 years, Christy's case remained a baffling cold case. Then, in 1988, a potential breakthrough emerged. With DNA analysis becoming a vital tool, detectives began collecting samples from everyone who had been a potential suspect over the years. Many cooperated, and their samples didn't match. But one person refused to provide a DNA sample. Dana Henry, a 34-year-old man living near the field where Christy was found. Henry had been on the police radar from the start, and his refusal now made detectives seriously question his innocence. They sought a court order to obtain his DNA. Henry appeared in court insisting he was innocent, but was charged with contempt of court and jailed for several days. Under immense pressure, he finally agreed to provide his DNA. In the end, Dana Henry's DNA did not match the killer's sample. He was released, but the ordeal had ruined his life. He spent around $50,000 on legal fees, lost his mortgaged home, and many friends and family turned their backs on him. He filed a lawsuit against the police department which went nowhere, and even decades later, the accusations continued to haunt him. He never received an apology from the police department. Another odd turn, then a decades-later match. For another year, Christy's case remained at a standstill. In 1989, an unexpected twist brought it back into the spotlight when a judge issued a restraining order against a local man named Willis. Since late 1985, Willis had been bombarding Christy's family with bizarre and irrelevant tips about who he believed was responsible for the murder. After nearly 4 years, Christy's family couldn't take it anymore and sought legal protection. Police investigated Willis himself, but found no evidence linking him to the crime. In 2000, the killer's DNA was uploaded to the FBI database, but still, no matches were found. The case went cold for many more years, routinely revisited by new teams of officers, but no closer to a solution. Then, in 2015, something completely unexpected happened. A notification from the FBI database changed everything. The DNA sample from Christy's killer perfectly matched a recently uploaded profile. The DNA belonged to Michael Jones, a 62-year-old man living about 150 miles away in Champaign, Illinois. Jones's DNA had been added to the database after he was arrested for domestic violence. His wife had reported him to the police. Ironically, the Illinois law requiring DNA samples from crime suspects, passed in 2002, was heavily advocated for by the very state's attorney from the county where Christy's murder took place, with her unsolved case being a major factor in its push. The killer revealed: Michael Jones. Investigators immediately delved into Michael Jones's past. The most striking discovery? His name had never once appeared in the entire 30-year investigation. He wasn't a suspect, a witness, or even remotely connected. The detectives simply hadn't known he existed. Michael Jones, however, had a long and violent criminal history. His first brush with the law was in the mid-70s for assaulting a woman, though he mysteriously avoided serious consequences. A year later, he attacked a 27-year-old woman, assaulted her, and left her in a hospital parking lot. He surrendered, claimed deep regret and mental health issues, but an independent psychiatrist found him fully aware of his actions. Jones was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, but like many at the time, he was released early for good behavior, serving just 6 years. He was back on the streets by 1983, 2 years before Christy's murder. His victim was never informed of his early release and later stated she would have challenged it had she known. A year after his release, Michael married, but his first wife left him in 1994, securing a restraining order due to his unhealthy interest in one of her young relatives. No formal charges were filed. In 1999, he was arrested again for assaulting a family member of his new girlfriend. Detectives also learned Michael often took long solo motorcycle trips and frequently visited relatives in Chicago. Christy's town was on the outskirts of his route, suggesting he might have simply been passing through. If he was just there for a few hours, tracking his presence would have been impossible, explaining why he never appeared on police radar. Christy's mother initially thought nothing of it when police called her about Michael, assuming it was another routine inquiry. But everything changed when a fresh DNA sample from Michael, obtained while he was in prison, definitively confirmed he was the killer. They visited Christy's mother in person to deliver the news that after all these years, the man responsible for her daughter's murder had finally been caught. Justice, but lingering questions.
Before formally charging Michael, detectives spoke with his ex-girlfriend. She described him as having a volatile temperament, prone to sudden rages, and an obsession with detective books and crime shows. This information led investigators to suspect he might be responsible for other unsolved crimes, his solo trips and fascination with crime stories hinting at a knowledge of how to cover his tracks. On September 18, 2015, Michael Jones was officially charged with Christy's murder. He denied involvement, and the case went to court, but the trial didn't start until 2018. Prosecutors sought a life sentence, but in the end, Michael chose to plead guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence. As part of the deal, he wasn't required to reveal any details about the crime itself, but the DNA evidence left no question about his guilt. As a result, the judge sentenced him to 80 years in prison, with the possibility of parole no earlier than 2095. Michael Jones will likely never walk free again. Christy's family thanked the investigators for finally bringing the case to a close. Christy's mother also expressed her profound frustration over Michael's early release in 1983. She pointed out that if he had served his full 10-year sentence, he wouldn't have had the chance to attack her daughter, and Christy would still be alive today. Dana Henry, the man initially suspected, attended the trial of the real killer. In a later interview, he shared that the false accusations had ruined his life, and even decades later, he still hadn't fully recovered. He had hoped seeing justice served would help him heal, but it didn't. Henry also revealed that throughout all those years, no one from the police department ever apologized to him, let alone faced any consequences for the damage they had caused to his life.